The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete garage floor at exactly 11:47 p.m. when I heard my wife Kelly's voice drift through the kitchen window above my workbench. "I'm tired of your feelings, Tony. You're too emotional to be a man." I froze under the hood of my beat-up Ford pickup, engine oil dripping onto my Yankees cap. 20 years of marriage, and she was talking to someone else like I was some kind of defective appliance she couldn't return to the store. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "No, he won't suspect anything," Kelly continued, her voice taking on that fake sugar-sweet tone she used when she wanted something. "Tony's too busy playing with his little tools in the garage to notice what's happening in the real world." The real world. Right. Because apparently, working 60-hour weeks as a software engineer to pay for her boutique lifestyle consulting business wasn't real enough. I stayed perfectly still, listening to her footsteps pace across our kitchen floor. Our house was a tired 1970s split level on Maple Street in Millbrook, Connecticut, one of those faded New England towns that looked charming in tourism brochures but smelled like broken dreams and old Tupperware when you actually lived there. "Elliot understands me," Kelly said, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. "He sees my potential. Unlike some people who think supporting your wife means paying bills and expecting gratitude." Elliot Case, the photographer. I'd met him at Kelly's business networking events, one of those Instagram-famous pretty boys who made a living taking pictures of rich women's breakfast bowls and calling it art. He had perfect teeth, drove a leased BMW, and always wore shirts that cost more than my monthly car payment. "Tomorrow night works perfectly," Kelly continued. "Tony's flying to Boston for that stupid conference. We'll have the whole house to ourselves." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked quietly to the garage window. Through the kitchen blinds, I could see Kelly leaning against our granite countertop, the one she'd insisted we couldn't afford but bought anyway. She was wearing the black silk robe I'd given her for Christmas, the one she claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. Apparently, phone calls with her boyfriend qualified as special occasions. "I know, baby," she purred into the phone. "I'm tired of pretending, too. This marriage has been over for years. I'm just waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. Pull the trigger, like I was some kind of business problem she needed to solve." I stood there in my garage, surrounded by the tools and projects that Kelly called my little hobbies, and felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. That would come later. It wasn't even anger. Not yet. It was something colder and more dangerous. Clarity. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could see my situation with perfect, crystalline focus. My wife didn't love me. She probably hadn't loved me for a long time. She was planning to leave me, but she wanted to do it on her terms, in her time, probably after she'd figured out how to take as much of my money as possible. The smart thing would be to confront her. The decent thing would be to suggest marriage counseling. The normal thing would be to get angry and start a fight. But standing there in my garage, listening to my wife plan my emotional execution, I decided I wasn't interested in being smart or decent or normal. I was interested in being strategic. Kelly ended her call, and I heard her footsteps heading upstairs to our bedroom. I waited another 10 minutes, then quietly entered the house through the garage door. The kitchen still smelled like the Thai takeout we'd shared for dinner, back when I thought we were just a normal married couple having a quiet evening at home. I grabbed a beer from the refrigerage and sat at our kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills Kelly had left for me to pay. Electric, gas, water, her credit card statements, the mortgage on this house that was supposed to be our dream home but felt more like an expensive prison. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss, Eric. "Flight confirmed for tomorrow, 6 a.m. Boston client meeting is crucial for the company. Don't screw this up, Ward." I stared at that text for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching Connecticut divorce laws, community property, asset division, alimony calculations. I read until my eyes burned and the beer went warm in my hand. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. I called in sick to work the next morning. Food poisoning, I told Eric, adding just enough misery to my voice to sell it. I'm puking every 20 minutes. There's no way I can make that flight. Jesus, Tony, Eric said. This client meeting is important. Can't you just take some Pepto and power through? Unless you want me throwing up in the conference room, I'd say no. He grumbled about responsibility and team players, but eventually agreed to reschedule. I hung up and smiled for the first time in weeks. Kelly came downstairs at 9 a.m., already dressed in her casual Friday outfit, designer jeans that cost more than most people's rent, and a silk blouse that screamed, "I'm too good for this small town." She found me sitting at the kitchen table, still in my pajamas, reading the local newspaper. "I thought you had that big Boston meeting today," she said, pouring herself coffee from the machine I'd bought her for Valentine's Day. "Food poisoning," I said, without looking up from the sports section. "Probably that Thai place. I told you their chicken looked suspicious." She made a sympathetic noise that sounded about as genuine as a $3 bill. "Oh no, honey, that's terrible timing." "Yeah, well, life's full of terrible timing." Kelly checked her phone, probably texting Elliot to cancel their romantic evening. I pretended not to notice the flash of irritation that crossed her face. "I guess I'll stay home and take care of you," she said, but she sounded like someone volunteering to clean public toilets. "Don't be silly," I said, finally looking up at her. "You've got that big client consultation today, remember? The one you've been preparing for all week?" She blinked. She'd obviously forgotten whatever lie she'd told me about her schedule. "Right," she said slowly. "The consultation." "Go ahead," I said, returning to my newspaper. "I'll just rest and drink fluids. Might even get some work done from home if I'm feeling better later." Kelly hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining her cover story and spending the day with her boyfriend. Greed won, as it usually did. "If you're sure you'll be okay?" "I'm a grown man, Kelly. I think I can handle a stomach bug." She kissed the top of my head, a gesture that would have meant something yesterday, but now felt like a Judas kiss. I smelled her expensive perfume, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary, and wondered if she'd worn it for me or for him. After she left, I got dressed and drove to the storage facility on the other side of town. I'd rented a unit there 6 months ago when Kelly started complaining about clutter in the garage. She thought I was storing old furniture and Christmas decorations. She was wrong. I'd been storing insurance, birth certificates, tax records, backup drives with financial information, copies of all our important documents. I'd also been storing some of my more valuable possessions, my father's watch, my comic book collection, the vintage guitar I'd bought in college. Call it paranoia or call it preparation. Either way, I was glad I'd done it. I spent the morning moving more items to storage, photo albums from our early years together, when Kelly still smiled at me like I was someone worth loving. My tools, the expensive ones Kelly called unnecessary, but that had saved us thousands in home repairs. My computer equipment, my books, anything that mattered to me personally. By noon, our house looked exactly the same, but everything I cared about was safely locked away where Kelly couldn't touch it. I drove home and found her car in the driveway. She was supposed to be at her consultation until evening. I parked down the street and walked back, approaching through our neighbor's backyard. Mrs. Harlow was in her garden, pretending to water her roses while obviously watching my house. "Afternoon, Mrs. Harlow," I said, hopping the low fence between our yards. She jumped like I'd caught her stealing mail. "Oh, Tony, I didn't see you there." "I bet you didn't. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Yes, lovely." She glanced toward my house. "I thought you were traveling today." "Change of plans, food poisoning." "Oh my." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "I hope Kelly's taking good care of you." "Kelly's at work," I said. "Big client meeting." Mrs. Harlow's face went through several interesting expressions: confusion, realization, then something that might have been pity. "Of course," she said. "Well, I hope you feel better soon." I walked around to my backyard and let myself in through the patio door. The house was quiet, but Kelly's purse was on the kitchen counter, and I could hear voices upstairs. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate and silent. The voices were coming from our bedroom. Kelly's laughter, bright and genuine in a way I hadn't heard in years, and a man's voice I recognized. I stood outside our bedroom door and listened to my wife having the time of her life with another man in the bed I paid for, in the house I'd worked overtime to afford, probably wearing the lingerie I'd bought her for our last anniversary. The smart thing would have been to kick down the door and catch them in the act. The dramatic thing would have been to start screaming and throwing punches. Instead, I walked back downstairs, got in my truck, and drove to Murphy's boxing gym on the bad side of town. Cal Murphy had been my best friend since high school. He was an ex-cop who'd opened the gym after taking early retirement when a drug dealer's bullet shattered his left knee. He was also the only person I trusted to tell me the truth, even when it hurt. I found him in his office, going over membership files and trying to make sense of numbers that probably didn't add up to a living wage. "You look like hell, Tony," he said without looking up. "Thought you were supposed to be in Boston. Change of plans." I sat down in the cracked leather chair across from his desk. "Cal, I need some advice." "About what?" "About how to destroy someone's life without going to prison." That got his attention. He looked up from his paperwork and studied my face with the careful intensity of someone who'd spent 20 years reading people's intentions. "What did Kelly do?" I told him everything. The phone call, the house visit, the voices upstairs. Cal listened without interruption, his expression getting darker with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "You want my professional opinion?" he finally said. "That's why I'm here. Divorce her. Take half of everything. Move on with your life." "And your personal opinion?" Cal smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Your personal opinion is why you came to me instead of a lawyer. So what do you think?" "I think," Cal said slowly, "that Kelly's about to learn why you don't declare war on someone unless you're sure you can win it." The next 3 weeks were the most educational of my life. I learned that Kelly had been having her consultations with Elliot for almost 6 months. I learned that she'd been telling her friends I was emotionally abusive and financially controlling. I learned that she'd already consulted a divorce lawyer and was planning to file papers after our 20th anniversary, probably so she could claim longer-term alimony. Most importantly, I learned that my wife had seriously underestimated my capacity for strategic thinking. I went back to work and told Eric I was interested in the remote position he'd mentioned months ago. The company had been trying to expand into the Pacific Northwest, and they needed someone to set up operations in Seattle. "It's a big move," Eric said during our meeting. "Full relocation package, but you'd be away from family, friends, everything familiar." "Sometimes a change of scenery is exactly what you need," I told him. "What does Kelly think about it?" "I haven't told her yet. I wanted to make sure it was a real possibility first." Eric smiled. "Consider it real. When can you start?" "Give me 60 days to wrap up my current projects and handle the logistics." We shook hands. I had an exit strategy. That evening, I sat Kelly down for what she probably thought was going to be a normal married couple conversation about our future. "I've been offered a position in Seattle," I said. "It's a significant promotion, but it would mean relocating." Kelly's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Seattle? That's across the country." "I know, it's a big decision. That's why I wanted to discuss it with you." I watched her face carefully. She was trying to look concerned and supportive, while probably calculating how a cross-country move would affect her relationship with Elliot. "What kind of timeline are we talking about?" she asked. "They want me there by the end of summer, so we'd need to put the house on the market, figure out what to do with your business, all of that." "My business," she repeated. "Tony, I can't just abandon my clients. I've worked so hard to build my reputation here." Her reputation as what, exactly? A woman who cheated on her husband with a photographer who specialized in Instagram food shots? I understand, I said. It's a lot to consider. Maybe we should table the discussion for now and revisit it in a few weeks. Kelly nodded, relief obvious on her face. That sounds reasonable. We shouldn't make any hasty decisions. Hasty decisions, like having an affair with a man who wore more hair product than most women. You're right, I agreed. We should definitely think it through carefully. That night, while Kelly was in the shower, I used her laptop to check her email. She'd never been particularly careful about digital security. Her password was our anniversary date, which said something about either her sentimentality or her lack of imagination. I found exactly what I expected to find. Months of correspondence with Elliot, ranging from flirty to explicit to downright pornographic. I also found emails with her divorce lawyer, discussions about asset division and custody arrangements for a daughter we didn't have. Apparently, Kelly had been telling people we had marital problems because I was obsessed with having children, and she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. This was news to me since we'd agreed years ago that kids weren't in our plans, and I'd never expressed any desire to change that decision. But facts had never been Kelly's strong suit. I forwarded the most damaging emails to a secure account I'd set up, then cleared the browser history. Kelly emerged from the bathroom in a towel, humming some pop song I didn't recognize. You seem happy, I observed. Just thinking about the future, she said. Sometimes change can be a good thing, you know? I couldn't agree more. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. I wasn't ready for that yet. I called a financial planning attorney who specialized in asset protection. Hypothetically, I said, if someone wanted to protect their assets from a potential divorce, what would be the legal way to do that? Hypothetically, he replied, that someone would want to make sure all assets acquired before the marriage are properly documented as separate property. They'd also want to be very careful about how marital assets are managed going forward. What if this hypothetical person suspected their spouse was planning to file for divorce, but wanted to make sure they weren't caught off guard? Then this hypothetical person would be wise to document everything, secure their own financial accounts, and avoid making any major purchases or financial decisions without careful consideration. I paid him for an hour of hypothetical advice and left with a very real plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically began separating my financial life from Kelly's. I opened new bank accounts and started directing my paychecks there. I removed my name from credit cards that were primarily hers. I documented every asset we owned and its source of funding. I also started paying very close attention to Kelly's schedule and her friends. Her mom squad, despite the fact that none of them actually had children, met every Wednesday for lunch at the country club. They were a collection of bored wives and wannabe influencers who treated gossip like an Olympic sport. Their leader was a woman named Jennifer Hartwell, whose husband owned the biggest real estate agency in town. I'd always dismissed them as harmless suburban cliches, but I was beginning to realize they were actually Kelly's power base. These women controlled the social narrative in Millbrook, and Kelly had been using them to build sympathy for herself while painting me as the problem in our marriage. That was about to change. I started making appearances at local events, the hardware store, the coffee shop, the gym, places where I'd run into people who knew us as a couple. I was friendly, normal, maybe a little sad around the edges. How's Kelly doing? People would ask. She's been working so hard lately, I'd say with a worried smile. I keep telling her she needs to take better care of herself, but you know how passionate she gets about her projects. And how are you holding up? Oh, you know me. I just try to be supportive. Marriage is about being there for each other, especially during the tough times. I never said anything directly critical about Kelly. I never hinted at problems in our marriage. I just played the role of the concerned, devoted husband who was worried about his wife's stress levels and work-life balance. It was amazing how quickly people started seeing me as the good guy in whatever story they imagined about our relationship. Meanwhile, Kelly was becoming increasingly careless about her affair. She started staying out later, making up increasingly elaborate excuses for her absences. She bought new clothes, expensive things that she never wore around me. She got her hair done at a salon in the next town over, probably so the local gossips wouldn't see her getting dolled up for her boyfriend. But small towns have long memories and short distances. People noticed when Kelly's car was parked outside Elliot's photography studio after hours. They noticed when she was seen having intimate dinners at restaurants 20 miles away. They noticed when she started posting social media photos that didn't include me. Most importantly, they started talking about it. And when people in Millbrook started talking about something, it didn't take long for the story to reach everyone who mattered. The explosion came on a Thursday evening in late June. I was in the garage, genuinely working on my truck this time, when I heard Kelly's car screech into the driveway. She slammed the car door hard enough to rattle our neighbor's windows, then stormed into the house. "Tony!" she yelled. "Get in here right now!" I took my time putting down my tools and wiping my hands clean. Whatever had happened, Kelly was furious, which meant my plan was working. I found her in the kitchen, pacing like a caged animal. Her face was flushed and her hair was disheveled, like she'd been running her hands through it. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay, what about?" "About the fact that half the town thinks I'm having an affair." I raised my eyebrows. "Are you?" The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Kelly's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to speak. "How can you even ask me that?" "Because you just said half the town thinks you're having an affair, and instead of laughing it off as ridiculous gossip, you seem genuinely upset about it." "I'm upset because people are spreading lies about me." "What lies, specifically?" Kelly stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "That I'm cheating on you with Elliot Case." "Are you?" "No." But she hesitated just a fraction of a second before answering, and we both knew I'd caught it. "Then why are you so worried about what people think?" I asked calmly. "If it's not true, the gossip will die down eventually." "Because it's affecting my business, Tony. Jennifer Hartwell told me today that some of her clients are asking questions about my professionalism. She suggested I might want to lay low for a while until things blow over." Jennifer Hartwell, the real estate queen who controlled half the social scene in Millbrook. If she was distancing herself from Kelly, it meant the gossip had reached critical mass. "That's unfortunate," I said. "What do you think started the rumors?" Kelly's eyes narrowed. "I think someone has been spreading lies about me." "Who would do that?" "I don't know, but I intend to find out." She was looking at me like she suspected I was behind it, which was both flattering and insulting. Flattering because it suggested she thought I was capable of strategic thinking. Insulting because she'd obviously never credited me with that kind of intelligence before. "Maybe," I said carefully, "you should think about whether you've done anything that might have given people the wrong impression." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means maybe you've been spending a lot of time with Elliot, and people have noticed. He's a professional contact." "I know that. You know that. But from the outside, it might look like something else." Kelly stared at me for a long moment. I could see her trying to figure out if I was genuinely naive, or if I was playing some kind of game. "You think I should stop working with him?" she said. "I think you should do whatever you think is best for your business and your reputation." It was the perfect answer. Supportive, but not controlling. Reasonable, but not demanding. The kind of response that would make her look paranoid and defensive if she argued with it. "Fine," she said. "I'll handle it." "I'm sure you will." That weekend, Kelly's world started to fall apart in earnest. It began with Jennifer Hartwell canceling their standing lunch date. Then, two of Kelly's biggest clients called to postpone their upcoming projects. By Sunday, Kelly had been quietly disinvited from the Mom Squad's weekly gatherings. I watched it all happen with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. Kelly had spent years building her social network, And now that same network was turning against her based on nothing more than rumors and speculation. The beautiful thing about it was that I hadn't actually done anything wrong. I hadn't spread lies or started rumors. I'd simply stopped protecting Kelly from the consequences of her own choices. When you're having an affair in a small town, you rely on your spouse to provide cover for you. You depend on them to make excuses, to deflect questions, to maintain the illusion that your marriage is solid. I'd simply stopped doing that. Kelly tried to fight back, of course. She called Jennifer Hartwell and demanded to know why she was being ostracized. She confronted her former clients and insisted that the rumors were false. She even showed up at the country club uninvited, trying to force her way back into the social circle that had rejected her. It was painful to watch, and I almost felt sorry for her. "I don't understand what's happening," she said to me one evening, after another day of closed doors and unreturned phone calls. "It's like everyone has turned against me overnight." "People can be cruel," I said, "especially when they think they smell scandal." "But there is no scandal. I haven't done anything wrong." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a woman who had convinced herself that her lies were truth. She'd been living a double life for so long that she'd forgotten where the deception ended and reality began. "Maybe," I said gently, "this is a good time for us to focus on our marriage instead of what other people think." Kelly's laugh was bitter. "Our marriage? Tony, when was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time we did anything together besides sit in the same room watching different screens? We're having a real conversation right now." "This isn't a conversation, it's an interrogation. You're sitting there judging me, waiting for me to confess to something I didn't do." "I'm not judging you, Kelly. I'm trying to understand what you want." "I want my life back." "Which life? The one where you spend every evening texting someone who isn't your husband? The one where you lie about where you're going and who you're seeing? The one where you tell people our marriage is falling apart because I'm too emotional?" Kelly went very still. "What did you just say?" "I said I want to understand what you want from our marriage." "No, the part about me telling people you're too emotional." I met her eyes steadily. "Isn't that what you think?" "I never said that to anyone." "You said it to someone." We stared at each other across our kitchen table, and I saw the moment when Kelly realized that I knew more than I'd been letting on. Her face went pale, then flushed red. "Have you been spying on me?" "I've been paying attention to my wife. There's a difference." "You've been listening to my phone calls." "I've been living in the same house as someone who's been lying to me for months. It's amazing what you notice when you stop pretending everything is normal." Kelly stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "This. Us. Any of it." She gestured around the kitchen like it was a crime scene. "I want a divorce." There it was. The words I'd been expecting for weeks, delivered with all the drama Kelly could muster. "Okay," I said calmly. She blinked. "Okay? If that's what you want, then okay." "That's it? That's your response? What did you expect? Tears, begging, a dramatic speech about fighting for our love?" "I expected something, some kind of reaction." I stood up and carried my coffee mug to the sink. "Kelly, I've been watching our marriage die for months. You asking for a divorce isn't a shock, it's a relief." "A relief? At least now we can stop pretending." I left her standing in the kitchen and went upstairs to our bedroom. I pulled a suitcase from the closet and started packing clothes. Kelly followed me upstairs. "What are you doing?" "Giving you some space to figure out what you want." "Where are you going to go?" "I'll stay at Cal's place for a while." "For how long?" I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 20 years and felt nothing but tired sadness. "However long it takes," I said. I moved in with Cal temporarily, but I didn't disappear from Millbrook. Instead, I became more visible than ever. I joined the volunteer fire department. I started coaching Little League on weekends. I became a regular at Murphy's gym, where Cal let me teach basic self-defense classes for anyone who wanted to learn. In other words, I became the kind of man the community respected and admired. The kind of man they felt sorry for when his wife left him for a younger guy with a fancy car and a photography business. Because that's exactly what happened. Within a week of our separation, Kelly moved in with Elliot. She didn't try to hide it or make excuses. She just packed her designer clothes and expensive makeup and moved into his downtown loft like she was upgrading to a better life. The town's reaction was swift and brutal. Jennifer Hartwell made it clear that Kelly was no longer welcome in polite society. The country club revoked her guest privileges. Her remaining clients canceled their contracts. Within a month, Kelly's business was effectively over. But I wasn't done yet. I hired the best divorce attorney in the state, not the local guy Kelly had consulted, but a shark from Hartford who specialized in high-asset cases. I presented him with months of documentation. Kelly's affair, her lies about our marriage, her attempts to hide assets and manipulate the narrative. She's been planning this divorce for almost a year, I told him. She consulted an attorney, she's been bad-mouthing me to potential witnesses, and she's been having an affair the entire time. Can you prove the affair? I handed him a folder containing printed emails, text messages, and photos I'd taken of Kelly and Elliot together. I'd been very careful to only document things that were visible from public spaces, nothing illegal or invasive, just evidence of their relationship. Connecticut is a no-fault divorce state, my attorney explained, but adultery can still affect alimony and asset division, especially if she was using marital funds to support the affair. She was. I can prove that too. I showed him Kelly's credit card statements, which I'd been tracking for months. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts for Elliot, all paid for with money from our joint accounts. This is very thorough, he said admiringly. How long have you been preparing for this? Since the night I found out she was cheating. And you never confronted her directly? I wanted to see how far she'd go. He smiled. She went pretty far. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. Kelly had expected a long, drawn-out battle where she could play the victim and claim I was being vindictive. Instead, she found herself facing a mountain of evidence that painted her as a calculating adulteress who had betrayed her marriage vows and stolen marital assets to fund her affair. Her attorney, the local guy she'd consulted months earlier, was completely outmatched. He'd prepared for a typical small-town divorce with the usual accusations and counter-accusations. He wasn't ready for the kind of methodical legal demolition my attorney delivered. Kelly lost everything. The house, which we'd bought with money I'd earned and saved before our marriage, became mine. The joint accounts, which she'd been draining to pay for her new lifestyle, were frozen and then divided according to what each of us had actually contributed. Her business equipment and client list, which had been purchased with marital funds, became part of the asset division. Most importantly, the court awarded me substantial alimony, not because I needed it, but because Kelly had been living off my income for years while contributing virtually nothing to our household finances. Kelly tried to fight it, of course. She hired a new attorney and claimed I'd been financially abusive, that I'd controlled and manipulated her throughout our marriage. She painted herself as a victim who had finally found the courage to escape. But the evidence told a different story. Bank records showed that Kelly had access to all our accounts and had been spending freely for years. Email records showed that she'd been planning to divorce me while continuing to live off my income. Testimony from friends and neighbors revealed that I'd been nothing but supportive of her business ventures, even when they lost money. The judge was not impressed with Kelly's victim narrative. Mrs. Ward, he said during the final hearing, you have presented no credible evidence of financial abuse or marital misconduct by your husband. What you have presented is evidence that you conducted an extramarital affair while using marital assets to support that affair and that you consulted with an attorney about divorce while continuing to live as a married couple and benefit from your husband's income. The court finds your claims of victimization to be without merit." Kelly's face crumpled. She'd expected sympathy, understanding, maybe even admiration for her courage in leaving an unhappy marriage. Instead, she got justice. The final decree was signed on a Thursday morning in October. I walked out of the courthouse a free man, legally and financially secure, with my reputation intact and my future bright. Kelly walked out with nothing but debt, a destroyed reputation, and a boyfriend who was already looking for his next sugar mama. Because here's the thing about guys like Elliot. They're attracted to success and money, not love and loyalty. When Kelly lost her social status and her access to my income, she became a liability instead of an asset. He dumped her 3 days after the divorce was finalized. I heard about it from Mrs. Harlow, who had become my unofficial neighborhood intelligence source. Kelly had shown up at the photography studio to find Elliot packing his equipment into a moving truck. He told her he was relocating his business to New York, Mrs. Harlow reported with obvious relish. Said he needed a fresh start and a more sophisticated client base. Kelly had begged him to take her with him. He'd laughed and told her she was too much drama for his new lifestyle. She'd thrown a rock through his studio window and been arrested for vandalism. The story made the local newspaper. I was having coffee at Murphy's gym when Cal showed me the article. Kelly Ward, 36, of Millbrook, was arrested Tuesday evening for criminal mischief after allegedly throwing a rock through the window of Case Photography Studio on Main Street. Ward was released on her own recognizance and is scheduled to appear in court next month. "Classy," Cal said. "Real classy." "She's having a bad week," I said mildly. "She's having a bad life, and it's about to get worse." "What do you mean?" Cal grinned. "You haven't heard? Jennifer Hartwell is telling everyone that Kelly owes money all over town. Apparently she's been writing checks her bank account can't cash." That made sense. Kelly had been living beyond her means for months, probably expecting to take half my assets in the divorce. When that didn't happen, she'd been left with expensive tastes and no income to support them. "How much money are we talking about?" "Enough that she's going to have to leave town or file for bankruptcy, maybe both." I felt a moment of something that might have been pity. Kelly had made her choices, but the consequences were harsher than even I had anticipated. Then I remembered the phone call I'd overheard in my garage, the months of lies and manipulation, the way she'd tried to destroy my reputation to justify her own betrayal. The pity passed. 2 weeks later, Kelly left Millbrook. She packed what remained of her belongings into her car, the one I'd been making payments on, which the bank repossessed 3 days after she left town, and drove away without saying goodbye to anyone. I heard she moved back in with her parents in Ohio. I heard she got a job waiting tables at a chain restaurant. I heard she'd gained weight and lost her Instagram followers and was telling anyone who would listen that her ex-husband had ruined her life. I didn't care enough to verify any of it. I had my own life to rebuild. I took the job in Seattle and moved across the country to start fresh. I sold the house in Millbrook, got a good price for it too, since the market was strong, and Jennifer Hartwell handled the listing personally as a favor to me. I bought a condo with a view of Puget Sound and started dating a woman I met at a coffee shop near my office. Her name was Sarah, and she was a librarian who liked hiking and cooking and didn't own a single piece of designer clothing. She thought I was funny and kind and emotionally available. She was right. On a sunny Saturday morning in March, almost a year after my divorce was finalized, I was reading the newspaper on my balcony when my phone rang. The number had a Connecticut area code. "Hello? Tony? It's Kelly." I hadn't heard her voice in months. She sounded older, tired, defeated. "Kelly, how are you?" I'm not good, Tony. I'm not good at all." "I'm sorry to hear that. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. I threw away 20 years of marriage for a man who didn't give a damn about me. Okay, I want to come home." I looked out at the Sound, where ferries were carrying people back and forth between the islands and the mainland. People going somewhere, people starting over, people moving forward with their lives. "Kelly," I said gently, "you don't have a home here anymore. I mean home to you, to us. I want to try again. There is no us anymore. There could be, if you wanted there to be." I thought about the woman I'd married 20 years ago, the one who used to laugh at my jokes and fall asleep on my shoulder during movies. I thought about the woman who had called me too emotional to be a man while planning to betray me with a man who wore more hair product than she did. They were the same person, but I wasn't the same man. "Kelly," I said, "I hope you find what you're looking for, but you're not going to find it with me." "Tony, please." I hung up the phone and blocked her number. Then I went inside to make breakfast for Sarah, who was still sleeping in my bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow like a promise of better days ahead. I never heard from Kelly again. 6 months later, I married Sarah in a small ceremony overlooking the water. Cal flew out to be my best man. Mrs. Harlow sent a wedding card with a note that said, "I always knew you were the good one." My new life was everything my old life should have been. Honest, peaceful, and full of genuine affection instead of performed obligation. Kelly had been right about one thing. I was too emotional to be the kind of man she wanted. I was too emotional to accept betrayal with a smile. Too emotional to pretend that lies were truth. Too emotional to let someone destroy my life without consequences. But as I watched my new wife laugh at something Cal was saying during his best man speech, I realized that being emotional wasn't my weakness. It was my strength, and Kelly's inability to understand that had cost her everything.